In the boundless, untamed heart of the American Midwest, there existed a tribe like no other, the Lakota Sioux. This tribe didn't just inhabit the land, they revered it, feeling its heartbeat beneath their feet and hearing its whispers on the wind. To the Lakota, the earth wasn't a resource to be exploited, it was a sacred, living entity. And the Lakota believed they were its protectors, chosen by the Great Spirit to be its guardians. Among them was a boy named Wakasa. But Wakasa wasn't just any boy. He was different. From the moment he could walk, he felt the pull of the earth in ways that others didn't. He would spend hours wandering alone through the forests, listening to the songs of the birds and feeling the strength of the trees as if they spoke directly to him. His destiny was greater than anyone realized. As a child, Wakasa would sit around the campfire with the elders, mesmerized by their stories of spirits that lived in every rock, tree, and river. These weren't just tales to entertain, they were the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes, passed down from generation to generation. Wakasa's grandfather, Totanka, was the tribe's revered shaman, a man who held the secrets of the earth in his soul. His words were like sacred scripture to the tribe, and to Wakasa, they were a lifeline. One autumn evening, when the air was crisp and the leaves were ablaze in shades of orange and red, Totanka called Wakasa to his side. The old man's eyes, deep and wise, reflected the flickering flames of the fire. "Our people," Totanka began, his voice low but steady, "have always been the guardians of this land. We do not own the earth. We are part of it, and it is part of us." His words carried the weight of centuries. As the future shaman, this duty will be yours, to teach our people and those who will listen that the earth is to be protected, not dominated. Wakasa nodded, the enormity of the responsibility sinking into his bones. He had always felt a connection to nature, but now he understood its true significance. He wasn't just a boy playing in the woods, he was a keeper of the earth, and one day it would be his duty to defend it with everything he had. Years passed, and Wakasa grew into a young man. He trained under his grandfather's guidance, learning the ancient songs of the spirits, the dances that connected the tribe to the rhythms of the earth, and the ways of healing both body and soul. His heart swelled with pride and purpose, but there was a shadow on the horizon. The world around them was changing, and the balance the Lakota had kept for generations was being threatened. Settlers from distant lands began to encroach on their territory, bringing with them a mindset of domination and exploitation. They saw the land not as a living entity, but as something to be conquered and consumed. The harmony that the Lakota had nurtured for so long was at risk of being shattered. One day, the Lakota camp buzzed with grim news. A group of settlers had begun cutting down a sacred forest near the tribe's hunting grounds. This wasn't just any forest. It was Makasika, a place believed to be home to the earth spirits. The destruction of Makasika wouldn't just be an environmental catastrophe, it would be a spiritual annihilation. By now, Wakasa had earned the respect of his people, and he knew that something had to be done. With a heavy heart and a fierce determination, he gathered a group of warriors and elders. Together, they set out for Makasika, knowing that the future of their land, and perhaps even their people, hung in the balance. As they approached the sacred forest, the sounds of axes biting into ancient trees and saws ripping through bark filled the air. It was a brutal symphony of destruction, accompanied by the cries of animals whose homes were being torn apart. Wakasa's blood boiled, but he held on to the teachings of his grandfather. Violence wasn't the answer, wisdom was. Standing before the settlers, Wakasa exuded a calm but commanding presence. "This land is sacred," he said, his voice steady but firm. "Not just to our people, but to the earth itself. You are not its masters. You must understand that. We are all keepers of this land." At first, the settlers were defiant, driven by their greed and their need for resources. But as Wakasa spoke, something shifted. His words carried the weight of the earth itself, and they began to resonate with some of the settlers, particularly a man named Thomas. Thomas, unlike many of his companions, had grown up with a deep respect for nature. He had come from a small village where the land was cherished, and something in Wakasa's words struck a chord in him. "I understand," Thomas said, stepping forward, "but we need these trees for our homes. Is there a way we can find a balance?" Wakasa nodded, his heart swelling with hope. If we work together, we can find harmony, he said. There are ways to use the land's gifts without destroying it, but we must do it with respect, with care. In a moment that no one could have predicted, the settlers, moved by Wakasa's wisdom and the sincerity in his eyes, agreed. They would halt their destruction of the forest and work with the Lakota to find a sustainable way forward. It wasn't just a truce, it was a partnership, a joining of two worlds that had seemed destined to collide. Over time, the two groups learned from one another. The settlers adopted practices that honored the land's natural balance, and the Lakota shared their knowledge of the Earth's rhythms. Together, they protected the environment, proving that it was possible to coexist without domination. Word of Wakasa's actions spread far and wide. His teachings of being keepers, not masters, of the earth began to influence others. Tribes and settlers alike came to understand that the land wasn't something to be owned or exploited. It was something to be revered and protected. Years later, Wakasa, now an elder himself, stood on a hill overlooking the forest of Makasika. The trees, once threatened, now stood tall and proud, a testament to the power of unity and respect for the earth. As he gazed upon the thriving land, he thought of his grandfather and the wisdom passed down through the generations. The earth was still sacred, still alive with the spirit of the Great Mother. Tatanka's words echoed in Wakasa's mind. Be the keeper of the earth, not its master. Wakasa had lived by this creed, and in doing so, he had ensured that future generations would continue to honor and protect the land that gave them life. And so, the legacy of the Lakota Sioux endured, a reminder that true wisdom lies in harmony, respect, and the understanding that we are all part of the great web of life. Wakasa's name became legend, a symbol of what it means to fight not for control, but for balance. In a world that constantly seeks to dominate, the Lakota Sioux had shown that the real power lies in guardianship, in knowing that the earth's heartbeat is our own.